welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As today, your Indiana Hoosiers defeat the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 76-57 at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. This was another game where the Hoosiers got off to a slow start as Rutgers jumped out to a 13-6 lead at the under 16-minute timeout in the first half. But Indiana's bench really got them going there in the first half, allowed Indiana to take control of this game, and the Hoosiers were able to cruise in the second half to the 20-point win. And as we're going to talk about on today's episode of the Assembly Call, it was really a bizarro win for the Hoosiers. It was a game that was won by protecting the ball, forcing turnovers, and playing solid defense on a day when Indiana didn't rebound and didn't shoot very well. So it was like all of Indiana's strengths and weaknesses were flipped for an afternoon. But nonetheless, it's a big win for Indiana to get back on the right track and hopefully start to build some momentum moving forward here in Big Ten play. I am your host, Jared Morris, for this afternoon's episode of the Assembly Call, and I will be joined by Ryan Phillips here in just a few minutes. Andy Bottoms has the afternoon off. But let's start out today's show as we start out every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And the banner moment today came early in the game. OG Anunoby did not start today, once again came off the bench. And the banner moment came at about the 8-minute mark left in the first half. OG had one of his patented steal and dunks. And really, it hasn't been as much of a patented move this year because we haven't seen as much of it. You know, OG last year, a guy who had a steal percentage of 3.6%, which is really good. His steal percentage has been down in the twos this year. Just hasn't been as aggressive, hasn't been as able to play those passing lanes like we saw last year. But today, he was back at it with 7 steals. And this play that OG made, got the steal, got the dunk, it put Indiana up 25-18, really got the momentum going for Indiana, and it was a harbinger of things to come as OG would get 6 more steals, also added 11 points to that and some rebounds. And it was great to see because there are few players in Indiana basketball history that are as good at playing passing lanes and getting steals and just disrupting the flow of what an offense wants to do as OG Anunoby is. And as I said, we haven't seen it as much this year, and it was great to see it again. He had another OG steal and dunk in the second half and really was just a disruptive force all day on defense. So an excellent job by OG, and that play early in the first half really showed us that we were going to get a little bit of the old OG, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come for the rest of the season because Indiana needs him playing like he did today if they're going to get this thing turned around and start marching up the Big Ten standings. Well, as I said, our banner moment brought to us by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based brand by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. And Connor and the team at Hoosier Proud offer a line of T-shirts and accessories that really are unmatched for anyone who wants a unique and stylish way to display their own pride in being a Hoosier. And I know that you've heard me now talk about Hoosier Proud all season long, and you've heard this, this ad spot for them, and maybe it's starting to blend in a little bit. So do something a little different this time. If you haven't checked out the website, go check out their website at HoosierProud.com. Use the promo code ASSEMBLY to receive a 15% discount on your entire order. That's promo code ASSEMBLY to receive 15% off at HoosierProud.com. Alrighty, let's make the extra pass, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our crew today, which is just one man, Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what do you have to rant about after a solid afternoon of basketball at Simon Scott Assembly Hall?
Well, first, I have to apologize to anybody listening or watching. I'm a little under the weather today, so but I'm sticking through it, playing through the injury. See how it goes.
Is this just tears from the Chargers' move or legitimate sickness?
Well, no. I mean, I think that I became sick to my stomach when the Chargers moved, but I think I've actually caught something now. I think my immune system was weakened by that news, and clearly something awful has come in. I think today for me first of all, I've always, and you know this, I've for years have talked about how I hate these early starts. I hate these noon starts. I think that the teams always come out flat and don't play well. Both teams. This isn't just it's anti-Indy. I think it favors the underdog to play a game like this because I think both teams play a little sloppy. Both teams, don't shoot well. They're not in rhythm. It's harder to warm up when you're warming up at 9 a.m. and then you're getting to your game at noon. So I've hated these for a long time. It didn't surprise me at all that Indiana shot 4 of 22 from 3 because they just never got into rhythm from deep. But I will say that I thought it was good to see Indiana sort of hang with it and and battle that poor start and just sort of overcome it instead of getting frustrated and slumping their shoulders and things like that. Yeah, it's Rutgers, all caveats for that. But I thought it was good to see Indiana sort of bounce back from a rough start in one of these where it could have gone to a, oh no, we're not playing well. How's this going to turn out? Now that we're going to try and force everything and we're going to try and, make something big happen. I thought they stuck to the game plan. I thought they adjusted defensively, which was impressive to see. Again, yes, I know it's Rutgers, but still it's baby steps for this team. And we've been saying that for a few weeks. They need to simplify everything and just sort of find ways to build. And even in the Maryland loss, I thought there was stuff to build off of in what I thought was a great college basketball game. And then, sort of today, there'll be stuff to build off of. And there are mistakes and there's a slow start and all that, but there's stuff to build off of. So I think it's I wasn't surprised to see them struggle offensively. I think that's typical in these early starts. But I was impressed to see them step up defensively, especially. I mean, this is the first time all year they got out rebounded, and it didn't really hurt them. And they got out rebounded 38-29. Rutgers grabbed 10 offensive boards, which is unacceptable, and we'll definitely talk about that. But I thought the fact that happened and it didn't hurt them at all was impressive because of the way they were playing defense.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are really interesting because I think if you had told Indiana fans, okay, Indiana's only going to rebound 17.6% of its misses on a day where they go 4 of 22 from downtown, I think a lot of us would have been thinking, oh crap, what went wrong in that Rutgers game, and did we actually lose this game?
Yeah, or at least it would have been close. I mean, this was a blowout, and that's what's stunning about it is those numbers you listed, and then they won by 19. It wasn't really a close game, so.
And that's why I think that there are, I know, look, all the entire game on Twitter, people are like, but it's Rutgers, blah, blah, blah. And it is. But, okay, number one, if you're just going to say, but it's Rutgers to everything that happens in the game good, then why are you even watching the game? Like, don't waste your time, right? And Rutgers is still a Big Ten team. And I realize they're the worst of the Big Ten teams. But there are specific things that you're looking for Indiana to get better at and to start building some good habits with. And so, look, Rutgers is a team that came in averaging about a point per possession. They're not a very good offensive team. And Indiana holds them to 0.8. So even given how poor Rutgers is offensively, Indiana played outstanding defensively to hold them that low, right? And we've talked all season long about how, Indiana turns the ball over, and you'd kind of expect Indiana to have a turnover rate of about 15% just playing 5-on-0, okay? And so the fact that Indiana's turnover rate was 14.8% today, that's good, right? And is Rutgers great defensively? No. But what it showed is that Indiana was able to get rid of some of those just head slap, unforced turnovers. They had a few of them, but not as many. And so this is not a team that, I don't know, last week would have been able to shoot 4 of 22 from downtown, not rebound, and still win by 19, 20 points. And so the fact that they were able to do that today is progress. And there's still a lot of warts on this, that are going to come out of this game that we'll talk about. But if you're not willing to grant progress and to be happy with some of the good things that happen, I mean, being a sports fan really just has to be the most miserable experience ever for you. So I would just urge you to enjoy the game, enjoy, this analysis of the game afterwards, take some, take heart in some of the positives, and then move on to the next game after that, right?
You're totally copying my rant from our radio show the other night there, Jared.
I am.
Can't take joy in this. Why are you doing it?
But we've been talking about that for 6 years. So,
I agree. And another thing, you're mentioning all these numbers. Like if Indiana did this, you wouldn't think they'd win. James Blackman was 0 of 8 from 3. I mean, and he still scored 16 points and was the leader offensively, but he was 0 of 8 from downtown. Again, these early games are not conducive to shooting or being in any kind of rhythm offensively. So yeah, there are just so many factors where you're looking at it like, God, if you just did a blind test of the statistics, you would think they lost this game by 15 points, but they actually played well in other aspects that they don't usually play well in, and that's positive to see. Now they have to put that together with the other aspects that they're good at. And
yes.
Again, as we said, baby steps here.
And those have been consistent aspects. So I'm not going to be terrified now that we can't offensive rebound or shoot. That's why I take this as a positive, that we finally did these other things. What it is a sign of legitimate hope that now Indiana can maybe improve some of those weaknesses, add it to their consistent strengths, and that's how this team now starts playing up to its potential, which is good. So a couple of things I want to talk about moving forward. You mentioned Blackman having a rough shooting night, but there was something he did offensively that really impressed me that I want to get to. And then we have to get to the day in Thomas Bryant, because there was some good, there was some bad. We need to talk about him. And so we're going to get to both of those topics, plus the incredible job that the IU bench did, especially the freshmen in that first half, because I don't want to forget about that just because we're now 20 minutes of basketball removed from it. But first, I do want to take a quick minute and tell you about our other sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts, as we've been talking about this year on the Assembly Call, has been a confusing process for a long time. It's always been hard to find the best deal for that game or show that you want to go to, and none of those older ticket sites want to change that. But SeatGeek is different. They've come along and they've created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets. SeatGeek is always the first place I go to look for tickets to a game or concert, because everything about SeatGeek is designed to make life easier for sports and music fans. They do all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring that you get the best possible deal. They do the work, you save the time and money, and best of all, Assembly Call listeners get a $20 rebate off of your first SeatGeek purchase. Here's how that works. To get your $20 rebate, download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, and click add a promo code and enter the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So again, for concert tickets, for IU basketball tickets, for any of your ticket needs, download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY, today. Alrighty, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. We are breaking down Indiana's 19-point victory over the Rutgers Chris Christie's today. I am Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips. And Ryan, so let's start going down some of the topics that we just mentioned. And I want to start with James Blackman Jr. because he was 0 of 8 from downtown. And some of those threes he was missing late in the second half weren't even close. So the last thing pretty much on this team that I will get worried about is James Blackman Jr.'s three-point shooting. Every now and then he has one of these days where he just can't make one from downtown. That's fine. But I'll tell you what I saw from James today. Number one, I saw him playing pretty good defense, especially in the second half when he was doing a pretty good job of guarding against guys going back door on him, which showed some awareness, showed some real defensive want to. Secondly, I thought in the first half when Indiana was struggling offensively early, James' aggressiveness going to the basket and making things happen offensively was something his teammates could kind of lean on, and that helped keep Indiana going there early. I liked seeing that. And then most importantly, you know, freshman, even sophomore James Blackman Jr., I don't think he rebounds from an 0 for 8 three-point shooting day to still score 16 points and still be as engaged on both ends. But I thought he showed today something that we've seen a lot from him this year, which is a real toughness going to the basket and finishing through contact and taking hits, you know, going to the free throw line and making them and getting right back up and going for the next drive. And so James is never a guy that really has been considered tough. But I think when you see his offensive mentality this year, there's a real toughness about him offensively that he doesn't get credit for. And I thought he really led Indiana in that respect today. And so despite the 0 for 8, I was really impressed with what he did today on both ends of the court. I thought it was a really good game for him.
Yeah, he's much stronger going to the hoop than he has been in the past, especially as a freshman. I think I harped on it a lot was, yeah, he's a great shooter, but he can't finish at the rim because it's the Big Ten and people make contact with him and he just throws the ball up wildly and doesn't get fouled and, you know, gets a shot blocked or pinned against the backboard. He's definitely not that guy anymore. I mean, kudos to him. He has gotten stronger. He's gotten more aggressive. He's very right-hand dominant, but at the same time, if he can get it, keep doing it. And you saw that at the end, he just had an unbelievable finish getting fouled sort of in the last couple minutes there that sort of put the game. I mean, it was a blowout anyway, but that sort of was the last gasp there. Finished, went to the free throw line, made his shot. So I definitely agree. I think that his aggressiveness going to the hoop, well, first of all, if he's a smart offensive player, he realizes that the more he does that, the more he's going to get opportunities for open looks because people are going to have to respect his driving ability. And if they don't, he can just go right by him. So I think that is certainly an aspect of his game that has grown and matured over the last few years. certainly since his freshman year. I mean, obviously he missed half of his sophomore year, but I think that even then we saw some flashes of it, and now it seems like he's a fully, realized finisher at the hoop. It's not perfect. It'll never be perfect with James, just because he's not a Troy Williams athletically or something like that, where he can just make unbelievable finishes at all times. But it's the mentality to go in there and at least get fouled and make a play through contact that is certainly changed.
Yeah. All right. So now we talked about a positive. Now let's talk about what to me was one of the negatives to come out of today, and that's the play of Thomas Bryant. I thought Thomas did not play well at all at the start of the game. I thought he actually used Indiana's first 4 or 5 possessions. One of them was a turnover. He had a couple of kind of awkward shots. And look, I will give Thomas this. We've been talking about he needs to park his butt on the block, get the ball, and be aggressive. And he was doing that. I mean, he was really, getting the ball down low, trying to be aggressive. But I think, what we saw from Thomas today and what we've seen from him over the last few games is a bit of an inability to understand when to be, really it's like he can't find this balance between kind of disappearing from the game totally and then being aggressive. And it's like he'll be a little bit too overly aggressive, or he's not even there. And in fact, I thought he struck a nice balance in the Illinois game, but outside of that has really struggled. And so he was 3 of 9 today. I thought several of his shots were forced. He had one that was kind of a left-handed hook shot, which he was about to take it. And I was like, hey, maybe this is something new from the arsenal, and shot it completely over the basket. Took a couple of quick threes that, he can take threes, and I'm totally fine with him taking them. But I didn't think that the place in the shot clock and just, kind of time game situation were very good. Only had 3 rebounds and didn't have 1 defensive rebound the entire day. So I just, on a day when I thought a lot of guys played well, and I think Thomas played hard, and I think he ran the court well, but he just, once again, seems to be struggling to be as fluid and competent down on the block as we saw last year. And I don't know exactly what the fix for that is, but I feel like this was the type of day where maybe he needed to even back off just a touch and be a little bit more judicious with when he was going to attack offensively. So he still seems to be a guy who's struggling to strike that balance. You've been obviously, you've spent a lot of time on the radio show, on this show, talking about Thomas. What did you think of him today?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It almost feels like he's playing as if he hit the freshman wall and he's a sophomore. I think that with a lot of freshmen, they'll who come out guns blazing and play well, I think we all talk about it. They hit the freshman wall around January and can't really figure out how they fit into games and don't take good shots. And it just comes from being tired and worn down after so long. It is such a long, intense season. And then most of the time, a lot of them catch their second wind. With Thomas, I think that, man, since like December, he seems like he's hit that kind of wall and he just can't find his spot. And like you said, it's not a lack of effort. It's just a lack of maybe understanding or basketball IQ to know when to go, when to hold up. And now I think it's mental. I think he's trying to force it because I think he's hearing people say, hey, get in the paint and go to work. And so whenever he gets the ball in the paint, he's trying to do too much. And I think that, that's a real tough place for Indiana right now because they don't have that sort of consistent scoring in the post. I mean, Deron Davis again has been very good, but at the same time, he's going to hit that freshman wall at some point, and so you've got to rely on Thomas Bryant on the interior. Luckily, we know that OG Anunoby and Juwan Morgan can pick up that slack on the interior, posting up and maybe getting some things there. But I just feel like Thomas needs, and I've been saying this for weeks, he just needs to simplify. He needs to just, as we've said, park his butt in the paint, and then just stop thinking about it. Just go to work, and if you see some help come, kick it out. If you see the double team come, but for the most part, just go to the hoop, get fouled, get to the free throw line. And try and do what you do best and do what makes you comfortable on the court. I mean, it's instead of, playing in the paint because that's what you're supposed to do, go to a spot where you're comfortable and work from there, as opposed to, oh, there's the basket. I need to go in that area and do it no matter what the position is or whatever. Just play within your comfort zone. It's a lot easier said than done, especially when there's so much pressure on a guy like Thomas to be the focal point of the offense. But it's just a situation where I think he needs to calm down and take a breath and start to go to work.
Yeah. And I frankly would have liked to see Deron Davis get a little bit more time today. In half the time that Thomas had, Deron scored half the points. He had 4 to Thomas's 8, and in half the time had 5 rebounds, whereas Thomas only had 3. And so, look, I'm not totally down on Thomas. I think he'll be okay, and I think long-term Indiana needs him to improve. But I didn't think we saw some of the steps that we kind of wanted to see from him today. And so that's something to keep an eye on that needs to get better for Indiana moving forward. Something I thought was really good today, Ryan, is what we saw from the bench in the first half. And the bench has been up and down for Indiana this year, but I thought in the first half they gave Indiana a real spark. And there has not been anyone, on this show or that analyzes IU basketball that has been higher on Devontae Green than you have been. I mean, you've said repeatedly, to everybody who said that Tom Crean hasn't recruited the future point guard, that Devontae Green is this team's future point guard. And he looked like it in the first half today. I thought the game really turned when he got in the game. I said on the halftime report, I thought Devontae Green was Indiana's first half MVP. Not everything showed up in the stat sheet, but I thought his aggressiveness defensively against Corey Sanders, Corey Sanders started out the game playing really well, doing whatever he wanted, getting to any spot he wanted to on the floor. Devontae Green came in and he just made him uncomfortable. He was hounding him. And it's amazing what happens when you make a ball handler uncomfortable. And I thought he did that, got a steal, had a couple of nice assists, made a couple of nice shots. So he played really well. I thought we saw more comfort from Curtis Jones. He had a great step back 3, and I thought he continued competing on the defensive end, which is what we've wanted to see from him. And Deron Davis did most of his work in the first half. So those 3 combined with OG Anunoby, I thought really helped Indiana get this game under control in the first half. And that was nice to see because Tom Crean needs to be able to count on guys coming off the bench, and it's hard to count on freshmen, but that's what we have as the majority of our bench right now. And I thought they played well, and I thought one of my biggest disappointments from the second half is that Devontae Green didn't get more time. I mean, before he came in there for the garbage time at the end, those final couple of minutes, he'd only played 3 minutes. And, tough to, I guess, second-guess lineup decisions in a second half where you extend the lead and you end up cruising to victory. But I would have liked to see him be rewarded for his really good play in the first half with more minutes in the second half. And, of course, the biggest storyline from Devontae's second half was his ill-advised alley-oop pass to Freddie McSwain that drew the immediate ire of Tom Crean. I think there's some times I'd like to see Tom Crean go after a ref as much as he went after Devontae Green at the end there. I mean, I get why he did, but I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that later. But your thoughts on what the bench guys did today, especially Devontae?
No, it was their best game in a while, I think, for sure, just as a collective group. Devontae Green, again, there's a lot of work to go on there. I mean, when I say I think he's the team's future point guard, I'm not talking about tomorrow. There's a lot of work that needs to go on there. He needs to develop his consistency, especially if he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's got to be a consistent guy. And defensively is where I was impressed with him today. I thought he made some nice plays offensively, but you can tell the guy is a willing defender. And quite frankly, with the way most college kids are coming onto campus these days, that's not the case. They have to be turned into defenders because the AAU culture does not promote defense unless you're a big man and you block everything. That's really, I mean, a truth. And that's just the way the culture is coming in. So to see Devontae Green and Curtis Jones really break down defensively and get to where they're supposed to be and look to be willing defenders, that's really encouraging, especially given the issues that Indiana's had stopping the ball over the last few years. I mean, that's a really good sign for the future. As for Deron Davis, Devontae Green not playing as much in the second half, I really think that if you look at it, I mean, I would agree with you. I would have liked to see them play more, but I mean, Tom Crean, when his top line guys at this point are doing well, he needs to stick with that because they need to develop some continuity, and there hasn't been much the last couple of weeks. So I feel like he was kind of just riding those top line guys to try and get them into some kind of rhythm. And to try and get them into a position where they're used to playing with each other and succeeding and doing well. And so maybe developing some more chemistry. But again, I agree with you. I would have liked to see those freshmen a little more in the second half. I just kind of understand what was going on, even though it was Rutgers and even though they were up by about 15 for pretty much the entire second half. You kind of want to see those guys develop some chemistry, and especially defensively, that's been a huge issue is that top 7 or so guys not playing well defensively and not communicating and things like that. And so I think that that was an opportunity for them to continue to gain some momentum defensively.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I'm now thinking back to the start of that second half, and I feel like we may have buried what was one of the more impressive individual stretches that we saw from any Hoosier today. And so we're going to get to that here in just a second. First, I do want to take a quick minute and tell you why you should activate your free Assembly Call membership. There are 3 quick reasons. Number 1, it's quick and easy. So go to assemblycall.com/join. Do it on a desktop. Do it on your mobile device. It's a mobile responsive site. It's easy. It'll take you about 15 seconds. It's how you get our best content. So by joining, you receive our weekly 6-banner Saturday IU Hoops news roundups, as well as our detailed post-game analysis emails that we send the morning after every game. And third, it's how you connect with us in the Assembly Call community. Only members can access our moderated post-game live chat, which is going on right now. It's hot today over at assemblycall.com/live, as well as our discussion forum. So if you like what you hear on the Assembly Call, then becoming a member is the next logical step. So join us for free at assemblycall.com/join. All righty, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips talking about Indiana's 76-57 victory over Rutgers today. And Ryan, you think back to the start of the second half, and I thought it was really important for Indiana to get off to a good start in the second half. They were only up by 9 at halftime. Really important to get off to that good start, put some space between you and Rutgers, remind Rutgers that they're playing at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, and this is not a game that they're going to be in. Plus, Indiana hasn't been very good at starting either half this season, so it was important to do that. And I thought they did. They go on an 11-4 run before the first media timeout, and I thought during that stretch, Juwan Morgan played some of the best defense individually that we've seen from any Hoosier this year. I mean, it was like he was Dikembe Mutombo for a short period there, because Indiana's defense was good to start out, but it wasn't perfect. There were a few breakdowns, but guess who was there every single time when something broke down? Juwan Morgan. And he finished the game with 3 blocks. He might have had all 3 of them in that 4-minute stretch. Now, unfortunately, later on in that stretch, he would go down on the offensive end holding his ankle. And so he came back in the game, but then later went back out. And so I have no idea if there's any severity there. If him coming back in the game was basically a sign that everything is good to go. I certainly hope so. Because what we saw from him, and it wasn't just the defense today, he had 2 moves offensively in the first half that absolutely showed elements to Indiana's offense that have been missing. One of them, he got the ball at the top of the key and just straight took his man to the hole and dunked on him. And when you have a big guy that can do that, that really helps put pressure on the defense, because as much as Thomas has tried to do that, he hasn't really been able to drive and finish like that. And so Juwan did that. And the other one, we saw Juwan over in the corner. I think it was Devontae that drives, or it was either Devontae or Newkirk that drove into the lane. Juwan smartly cuts from the opposite corner to the bucket, gets the ball, scores. It was an and one. It was exactly the kind of thing that we saw Troy Williams do last year that has been missing this year. And as much as we've missed Yogi, we've also missed Troy's ability to get easy buckets. And so Juwan Morgan's ability to really show that, that kind of varied game on offense, be very efficient, pick his spots offensively, and then just basically be a human eraser on defense. Again, not a game for Juwan that jumps out on the stat sheet, but when you watch the game, you saw, again, just the versatility that he brings and why he's such an important player, and why no matter what lineup you concoct as being Indiana's best to start a game, finish a game, whatever, Juwan is the one guy that or is a guy, probably add Blackman to that mix, and you probably add Rojo to it too, that you feel like you can really count on consistently to bring it. And we saw that again from him today. And I just thought it was some really impressive stretches from him before he went down with the injury.
Yeah, we've talked about him as far as his role and maybe, not maybe overthinking things for a few weeks there during the season. But man, when he just rolls a ball out on the floor and just goes and plays, he's really impressive. And he's one of those guys that I think we all were really excited after watching the practice that we got to see on the Big Ten Network earlier in the year. We were all real excited about what he can bring. Just from a growth standpoint, He's a big, long, athletic guy who is also an incredibly smart basketball player. We saw that last year. One of the things that I used to say all the time about he and OG Anunoby is they just didn't do anything wrong. They may not always, make amazing plays or impress you with highlights and stuff like that, but they were never in the wrong place. They were never out of position. They were never, just throwing the ball away, for no reason. So I think that seeing that combination of Morgan being better athletically and from a size standpoint, and then what we know he can do as a basketball player, being smart, and both plays you described were an example of him just making the smart basketball play. You throw in the athleticism, of course, on the finishes, but it was the smart play. When you have a guy singled up like that from the perimeter, take him. When you're as good as Juwan Morgan is, take him. And he did. And the finish obviously was incredible. And then the baseline thing was, hey, when a guy drives, your man is going to watch the ball. You cut behind him and go to the hoop. And that was something, I know Troy Williams had his warts, and we all certainly discussed those at length. But one thing he had were guts to go to the hoop, and he would finish, and he had that athleticism that is rare, and that finishing ability that is rare, and he just had no fear of going to the hoop. And I feel like sometimes this team is a little tentative, and Troy Williams was never tentative as far as that goes. So I think, one thing that Troy, when you mentioned that and you mentioned Juwan going to the hoop, is I remember last year against Kentucky where he drove in and just threw down a monster dunk that he missed, and it went off the back of the rim and went all the way out to half court. And, Kentucky came down and threw their own alley-oop or scored or something. And I remember thinking, I can't be that mad at Troy for that because it was so unbelievable. He just missed it. And it's the same thing. I mean, who on this team can you count on to do that consistently? Probably no one right now, but they need somebody to be able to do that and be the straw that stirs the drink and mixes it up and is more aggressive offensively. So it was good to see Juwan do that. Obviously, the blocks on defense, I think he needs to get the Mutombo finger wag going because he's been pretty great at doing that lately. So yeah, but I agree with you. I think he was very important, even though, we didn't see that much of him today because of the injury.
Hey, let's linger on the performance of OG a little bit more because I talked about him in the banner moment. Again, he finished with 11 points, 2 assists, 3 rebounds, 7 steals, a block, and almost as important as all those numbers, no turnovers. Just didn't make that big mistake, finished well, did miss a couple of threes, but was efficient. And look, we kind of saw him explode onto the Big Ten scene last year against Rutgers. He was one of the guys, along with Max Bielfeldt and Ryan Burton, that basically saved Indiana from a destructive loss at Rutgers last year and had a couple of those steal and dunks. And so he clearly likes playing Rutgers, as do a lot of Big Ten players, let's be fair. But I just thought it was nice to see him getting back to doing that. Do you think that maybe we've been a little bit unfair to him and maybe the ankle injury has lingered a little bit and that's getting a little bit better, and he's, we're speculating here, but he's starting to feel a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable and a little more confident doing OG Anunoby things? And let me also say this, Tom Crean said before the game, we have got to start forcing turnovers. Like, there's just no question about it because Indiana's like 300 and something when it comes to forcing turnovers. And it's always nice to see the coach set something as a key and then Indiana go do it, because Rutgers' turnover percentage today was 29.4%. So Indiana really did it. And, of course, OG keyed that.
Those are Hoosier numbers. Those are Hoosier numbers.
Those are Hoosier numbers. But, what did you think just of what OG did today? And do you think that this is a blip against kind of a bad team? Or do you think we can start seeing this from him again? Because it's what we saw from him last year.
Man, I hope it's more than a blip. You're right. I mean, look, the ankle injury, those linger for weeks, even if you're playing. So I don't know if he's just been uncomfortable on the floor, but he certainly hasn't been the same guy. And today, we saw him playing just some incredible defense, and that was his calling card last year. I mean, yeah, he did some great things on offense last year, but the defense was where it all started. And so and he hasn't been that great defensively this year at times. I mean, he's still been solid, but there have been times where you've kind of been, is this the same guy? And I think that he, along with some other guys, are just overthinking everything and not just playing basketball. And today I thought, as you said, I mean, look, he almost had a double-double with points and steals. Who does that? So I don't know. I think it was a great game for him and hopefully something to build on. But at the same time, all I want from OG Anunoby is consistency. And I think that's all we all want from him, is just to be consistently solid, and then occasionally make plays where he elevates and rises above and does great things. But we just haven't gotten consistency from him this year. And as we've seen in wins and losses, this team goes as OG and Thomas Bryant go. I mean, if they play well, this team wins. If they don't, it's a struggle. And so, yeah, I think coming up with these next couple games, I mean, at Penn State, look, that's been an issue for Indiana in the past, playing there. I think they win, but it's been tough in the past. And then that Michigan State game, I mean, Michigan State was a team that people counted out a couple weeks ago. They're now 4-1 in the conference, playing Ohio State to go 5-1 today. Tom Izzo's doing a Tom Izzo. And so you're going to play at home against Michigan State. That game has taken on a huge, it's taken on a lot more importance than it did a few weeks ago. So hopefully with guys like Anunoby and Bryant and Morgan and Blackman and Johnson, they can just find an equilibrium and find their level and start playing like they know, they can play. And hey, Josh Newkirk too, he had a nice day today. And so, if those guys can be relied upon, and then you get the bench playing up to their ability as they did today, Indiana looks like a pretty nice team. The problem is consistency. They just have to be consistent.
By the way, anybody who counted out Tom Izzo and Michigan State, you're a fool. You're a fool.
I mean, look, but there were all these think pieces like, well, maybe this is finally the year he doesn't turn it. Yeah, right. Come on. Come on, guys.
Yeah, and good point on Newkirk. After a really rough start, he did play better. Finished with 5 assists. Scored 6 points, only 4 shots, so didn't take some of those kind of crazy shots, and only had a couple of turnovers, which was nice to see. Just a couple other quick observations here. One is Zach McRoberts, who came in and actually got a couple of open looks mid-range that he normally would have basically passed up before even recognizing how open he was. And today he shot both of them and made them. And I tell you what was an interesting thing to see, he had a screen set for him, and he actually did a hard curl cut off of the screen. And it was like, I watched it and I was like, why did that look so weird? And it's because, you're so used to seeing a screen and guys just kind of fade back to the 3-point line. I was like, holy crap, he did a curl.
Got the Colin Hartman cut.
It was great. It was so great to see. And he gets the ball, shoots it, makes the shot. So that was nice because, the way that Tom Crean deployed Zach McRoberts today, I think is how you want to see it. It was short little spurts, came out there, played some good defense, had that nice little rebound tap that he did that ended up leading to a run out for Indiana, made a couple of buckets, got picked up his 3 fouls in 10 minutes, so used some of his fouls. But that was really nice to see from Zach McRoberts. And if he can do that and just be a little bit of a threat on the offensive end, he becomes so much more useful because it's not like you're playing 4-on-5 on that end. So that was really nice to see.
One thing I got to say, though, is Zach against Penn State, don't shoot 7 shots. Keep reading. Yeah, I know you hit a couple today, but let's keep the enthusiasm dampened a little bit. I don't want to see you going like 2 for 10 your next time out.
Yeah, no, that would definitely not be good. And Robert Johnson, 10 points, 5 rebounds after a really rough start for Rob. Rebounded some. Ryan, what do we do with the starting lineup? Would you continue running this group out there? Do you switch it up now? I mean, I feel like, maybe OG is finding a bit of a comfort zone coming off the bench. Obviously, he wasn't great against Maryland, but, was, much better today. What do we do there? Because we've got to get off to better starts in games.
No, I agree with you. I think Josh Newkirk has been playing a lot better. I think he's been, as people have stopped talking about him, and all of a sudden he's playing better. It's kind of a bummer for Josh because you'd like them to be talking about how he's playing much better. But the last couple games, I feel like he's solidified his spot in the starting lineup. He doesn't have to play more than other guys, but I like his ability to distribute from that spot, and he's actually shooting better now. Again, I agree with it's been a problem all year with starting slowly. At the same time, today I kind of give him a pass because, as we said, the noon start is always terrible for the favorite. That said, I don't know what you change. I really don't, because I like OG coming off the bench and providing a spark. And we've seen him all year not be able to start well in games. He's a very slow starter. So maybe that's a good thing for him coming off the bench. Right now, the starting lineup is the starting lineup, and I don't know if there's much of a change you can make. I think we're going to have to see how they play against Penn State, and maybe then you do something, because that Michigan State game, they're not getting. I mean, that's a 1 o'clock. That's a 4 o'clock game. So they're going to be fired up and ready to go. So yeah, I don't know what you do with it. I think you keep it the same for now, because I just don't see a 1-for-1 replacement on the bench right now, especially since OG, we've seen him as a starter just start incredibly slow. But yeah, if he has another really good game, maybe you give him another shot in the starting lineup and you adjust something. But for now, I think you got to keep it the same. I think that group, while it didn't play well at the start, wound up playing pretty well together in the second half, and once it found its footing, and they played better. And as we said, they played long stretches together later in the game, and maybe we could have seen some of the younger guys in, but those guys were playing so well defensively, you kind of don't want to break up the rhythm.
By the way, for those of you who look at the stat sheet and say, well, Rutgers shot 12 of 26 from the free throw line, which is awful. Let's say that they shoot 70% from the free throw line. Their points per possession looks a lot better without anything being different, but them just making some more free throws. And that's a fair point. And yeah, probably in a normal game, they would shoot a little bit better. And so the numbers look a little bit better. But this was one of those games where the numbers kind of matched what you saw. And I thought Indiana played better defensively. They were more solid. Rutgers was having to go to the line and shoot free throws to earn those buckets instead of just getting wide open layups, which we've seen sometimes when Indiana's defense is breaking down. So there was a lot to like about Indiana's defense today. Maybe it wasn't 0.8 points per possession good, but it was at a minimum 0.9 points per possession good, and that is a huge improvement over what we've been seeing.
Yeah, and I want to say this too. I mean, Rutgers did go to the line 26 times, but nobody on Indiana was in foul trouble. So none of the fouls were egregiously dumb fouls where, look, dude, how'd you get yourself in foul trouble that early? And nobody on Indiana had more than 3 fouls. So it wasn't guys just swatting to swat at the ball or anything like that. There were just the typical Big Ten foul calls, and Rutgers went to the line and again didn't make their shots. I mean, maybe that means you're fouling the right guys.
Yep. All righty, let's we got to look ahead to that game against Penn State, get some final thoughts, and we will do that in our Yogi's Last Call here coming up. Real quick, before we do that, one more quick reminder that a great way to support the Assembly Call and to get a really great T-shirt for yourself is by ordering our official Assembly Call T-shirt or any other T-shirt from our friends at HoosierProud.com. Go to HoosierProud.com. Check out their unique selection of stylish apparel that anyone with Indiana roots is going to love. And don't forget to use the promo code. It's Assembly, ASSEMBLY. That gets you 15% off, not just on our Assembly Call logo T-shirts, but on anything else that you buy. Again, the URL is HoosierProud.com. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips, and we are wrapping up our breakdown of Indiana's 76-57 victory over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights today. Ryan, we don't have Andy here to give us his detailed breakdown of the Penn State Nittany Lions. I will say this about Penn State and the Bryce Jordan Center. I have come to fear that arena. I have come to fear playing Penn State. I think, the memories of Indiana's terrible collapse against them of 2014 still dance in my memory. Obviously, the memories of last year's game. It just seems to be a place. Heck, even the 1993 Hoosiers went up to Penn State and had trouble and needed double overtime to win up there. So it's just kind of been a place that has always seemed to not bring out the best in the Hoosiers. And sometimes we win because we always have more talent than Penn State. But I will say the talent is a little bit closer this year because Pat Chambers got a couple of guys, and Tony Carr and Lamar Stevens at Indiana recruited heavily. So they're still freshmen, so they're inconsistent. But Penn State is better than Penn State of recent years. We've always had a high opinion of their coach, Pat Chambers. And so this is a game that, you see Penn State on the schedule. There's still that tendency to think, okay, this is a game Indiana should win. And don't get me wrong, this is a game that Indiana should win. But this is exactly the kind of game that Indiana has been losing because this is a team kind of like a Fort Wayne and even better than a Fort Wayne where, they play some tough defense, not real explosive offensively, but they're going to be tough. They're going to make Indiana work. They're probably not going to let Indiana run and dictate the tempo. And so this is a game where Indiana, to win, is going to have to take the positives from today. the reduction in turnovers, the increase in forcing turnovers, and playing better defense, and then combine them with the things Indiana has been doing well. Because if Indiana rebounds like they did today up at Penn State, I don't think this is a game that Indiana wins. And, we'll see. Sometimes Indiana shoots well on the road. Sometimes they don't. The reason why I think Indiana will win, and I do think Indiana is going to go up there and win, I feel much better about that now after seeing this game today against Rutgers, is I think what Indiana really missed against Penn State last year was James Blackman Jr., a guy to go get a bucket. Because Indiana really struggled offensively last year, and I thought that was a game where James would have helped. And to me, seeing what we saw against Maryland, seeing what we saw from him today, I think he's going to be the difference, and I think he'll play well. I think he will go get Indiana 18 to 20 points, even if it's not as efficient as we've expected from him. And I think if Indiana leans on him and everybody else does their part, rebounding, playing tough defense, this is a game Indiana will win. But make no mistake, it's going to be a tough one, kind of one of those knockdown, drag-out battles. And, there's a reason why the Bryce Jordan Center has, kind of become the barn to me in terms of road venues against, second half Big Ten teams that I don't particularly like going to. So hopefully Indiana brings it because they need to.
Yeah, and let's their last 3 games at Michigan, they lost by 3, 72-69. And then the last 2 games at home, they beat Michigan State, and yesterday they beat Minnesota. So they're on a bit of a roll of playing well. So Indiana's going to be walking into, oh God, pardon the pun, but the Lion's Den in this one.
Go.
No.
Just go. Just turn off your mic and go to bed.
It's one of those things where I thought of the term and I didn't think of their mascot, and then I was going to say it, and I was like, oh, God, why are you doing that? No, don't do that. And, but whatever. Don't blame me. It's been a rough week
for you, man. It's been a rough week. And by the way, just in terms of profile, Penn State offensively 194th. So again, not a great offensive team, but they are 31st in the country in defense.
Yeah, they held Minnesota to 50 yesterday. So, and Michigan State to 63. So yeah, it's a good defensive team.
So like I said, they are the type of team that gives Indiana trouble. Indiana likes playing against offensive-oriented teams that want to go up and down the court and kind of get in a running game with you. And a lot of times Indiana can kind of outshoot you and outgun you. But Penn State's going to want to slow it down, play tough. So, again, we'll see. But it's a huge game for Indiana because Indiana's already lost 2 home games. You got to pick up 1 on the road. And plus, Indiana just needs to build some momentum. You got to start stringing some wins together to get yourself back into the upper half of the Big Ten. And I know someone, kind of joked before today's game, hey, this is the battle for second to last place in the Big Ten. And yeah, it was. Indiana needed to win this game to get itself into a tie for 11th place in the Big Ten. That's where we are. It's early in the season. Indiana, stubbed their toe, put themselves behind the 8 ball with those early losses. So all you can do now is take it game by game, improve, win the games you're supposed to win. Try and pick up a couple now that maybe you're not supposed to win and get yourself back in the race. And so Indiana took care of business at home against Illinois. They took care of business today against Rutgers, and they came damn close to getting one of those wins that they needed against Maryland. Now they have to go get it against Penn State because you lose that game at Penn State, and, there's a lot of tough road games left on there. So as good as Penn State has been, they're still not a great team. They're a good team. And this is one for Indiana to go win. So if OG Anunoby can bring the defense like he did today, if James Blackman Jr. can bring the tough-minded offense, and if Thomas Bryant can play a little bit closer to how he played against Illinois than how he's played these last couple games, that'll go a long way towards Indiana being able to get this win. All right, Ryan, let's wrap up here. It is time for our last call, brought to you by Yogi's, and I believe that this show is being broadcast live at Yogi. So if that is the case, we want to say hello. We're really excited about our new partnership with Yogi's and broadcasting the post-game show.
Those poor people. I apologize.
They've had to look at you. Like I tried to dress nicely and shower and be presentable, and you're here with a hoodie and, looking like you just woke up.
Folks, I sincerely apologize. As we said at the outset of the show, it's been a rough week for me. So just bear with us. Don't take this as an example of the quality of the show, usually.
Yes. All right. Ryan, give us your final thoughts here in our Yogi's last call.
Well, hey, a win's a win in the Big Ten. You win by 19 over Rutgers. Do what you're expected to do. But so on the surface, it looks like, okay, yeah, they did what they were supposed to do. But I do want to, again, commend the defense. I thought Indiana played very well defensively. I thought there were a few really nice individual performances to build off of. As we said, James Blackman, 0 of 8 from 3. Yet he wound up finding other ways to score and influencing the game. Josh Newkirk, 6 points, 5 assists, 2 turnovers in 24 minutes. I thought he played well. As you said, the bench was much, much improved. And then, you got Robert Johnson doing what he does, playing solid defense all the way around and getting into double-figure scoring. So I think a lot of guys have something to build on in this game. Again, this team is trying to find something right now. So you take the positives where you can, you build on them, you take the baby steps to the next spot. And hopefully, they take another step by winning on the road against Penn State, that's a tough team. I mean, you usually don't think of Penn State that way, but that's a team that's playing very well. I predicted they would win both these games. I'm sticking with that. I think they will find a way to win. And that was the thing about last year's team that was so special. It wasn't Yogi. It wasn't, Troy. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was they always found a way to win. No matter how it looked, it wasn't the same formula every game. Somebody stepped up and they always found a way to win. This team needs to find that. They need to find ways to win when things don't go well. And today they found it with defense. So let's see if they can maybe build off that and find a way to win when things don't go well.
Absolutely. And for the record, according to Ken Pom, the Hoosiers have a 66% chance of winning that game, predicted to win 78-74. Ken Pom predicted a 16-point Indiana victory today, so pretty spot on. So take that as you will. Look, the bottom line about today's game is we all felt like we would be further along with this team, at this point in the season than just hoping for progress against Rutgers. But you lose that game to Butler, you lose to Nebraska and Louisville and Wisconsin and Maryland, and you find yourself at 1-3 and just reeling. And it is what it is. And every season is kind of its own thing, and it takes these different twists and turns that you don't expect. And so this is where we are with this team. And so I think you feel good about some of the things that you saw today in terms of the forcing of the turnovers, the reduction of the turnovers, the defense. It was nice to listen to a pregame talk from Tom Crean to Don Fisher, and then see Indiana go out and do it in the game, because we noticed that a lot last year, that it always seemed like, whatever Tom Crean's keys were before the game, his team went out and executed it. And that's a good sign, I think, of a team that's going to be consistent and a mature team that's going to win tough games. And we haven't seen that a lot. We've heard Tom Crean mention that, X, Y, or Z is the key, like, not over-helping off of shooters. And then we come in and listen to his post-game, and all he's talking about is how Indiana over-helped off shooters. And so, again, that is kind of one of those little under-the-radar things that I always look for, and when it happens, I'm really pleased, and it happened today. And so if Indiana brings its normal offensive rebounding and its normal shooting to the table, this is the 35 to 40-point blowout that everybody wanted and that would have pleased everybody. But I would really urge you not to just look at this 19-point victory over Rutgers, kind of go ho-hum, okay. There were some really legitimate reasons to hope that Indiana can take that next step now. Because if Indiana had just gone out and offensive rebounded and shot its way to a 20-point victory, but the defense was bad and the turnovers were bad, well, then I don't think we really learned anything about this team. And so that's why I really liked what we saw today, because Indiana won with a different formula. And so now, as we mentioned before, if they can take the positives from today, add them to the positives that have been really consistent all season, shooting for the most part and certainly the rebounding, now we have something to build on moving forward. And of course, that next opportunity for Indiana to do it is going to be Wednesday, January 18th against Penn State. That game starts at 7 o'clock Eastern time. It is on the Big Ten Network. Of course, we will be here with the halftime report over on Facebook Live. And we will be here right after the game for the post-game show at assemblycall.com/live. So we appreciate you listening live. We appreciate you watching and listening at Yogi's. We appreciate you listening on the podcast. And we look forward to talking with you, hopefully, for another victorious episode of the Assembly Call after that game on Wednesday against Penn State. All right, until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.